Hello everyone, it's Jessica here with How Notes for Beauty, and welcome to the second episode of Ask Jessica. So I did notice that it's been about a year since I did the last episode of Ask Jessica, which is a series that I wanted to do, just pretty much encompassing all of the questions that I come across, or the commonly or frequently asked questions that I get typically on Instagram, where I'm mostly active at. So make sure that you follow me at Hell Notes for Beauty. But I get a lot of questions about a variety of things, especially spiritual things, wellness, but more about spiritual development are the main questions that I get about spirituality and spiritual development. Is how do I know if I'm on the right path or where I'm headed? So I initially wanted to do this series, but the last one that I did was about a year ago. Well, the first and last one that I did was about a year ago, but I thought that I'd continue this series because I do get a lot of good questions, especially from beginners or just general questions that people have about spirituality and want to know my opinion or my take or my perspective on any given subject. So I will be keeping up with this series, and today is series number 2, or episode number 2 of the series. And a very good question that I received was from someone who was asking me about these charlatans, or people that were reaching out to them to do spiritual work for them, such as to remove curses or help them communicate with their ancestors. And just recently, especially last year, I noticed a lot. Like, it comes in spurts. You see them coming like back to back, week after week. They impersonate other spiritual workers, they impersonate other people, or they flat out reach out to people and ask them or tell them, oh, I got this feeling, or your ancestors reach out to me, or your ancestors need this. Lately, I haven't seen much of them. I've also been, I'm not a victim, but have been approached by a few of them. But last year I had someone ask me a question, a very serious question. And I say serious because in my mind, you know from a mile away that these people are scammers. A real reputable spiritual worker with integrity and experience will never ever reach out to anyone. But I thought that I was being a little bit jaded, seeing that I'm already part of this community. I'm part of, knowing how people scam people, especially from a spiritual perspective. And I have a good level of experience, as I have experienced some things as well in terms of these people kind of scamming you. But now I see that it's so prevalent on social media. So this one person asked me, Jessica, I keep being requested or being reached out by these people telling me that my ancestors need help, or that they can help me with my ancestors. Are they reputable? Is this something that I should be concerned of? And I found it so shocking because, again, in my mind, I would think, you would know that's not the proper approach to reach out to someone to help them spiritually. But unfortunately, there are many people who really don't have that experience, don't have that background, and who really are vulnerable to these types of scammers. So today I'm going to be talking about how to protect yourself and identify spiritual charlatans, and how to empower yourself to be able to identify if and when someone has your best interest at hand in terms of your spiritual development. So there are many people who don't really have an understanding of how this works. A lot of people still have that spiritual motif, such as, there's someone higher up, there's always someone that knows more than you, someone that has the power or the gifts to communicate with your spirit or your spirit guides or with your ancestors. And I'm here to tell you that is not the case. Spiritual work is such a personal journey and a very personal thing, and it's something that you develop within yourself before you go into a coven or a tribe or a group. It's something that you over time develop on your own and work through yourself. So I thought that it would be so important to have a video really touching base on this topic and really helping people identify, when is it that things aren't as they seem or people aren't who they claim to be, and how to be able to protect yourself from those types. First thing that I always recommend is to have some introspective meditation sessions with yourself. And meditation doesn't have to be that you're sitting cross-legged and in the Om position. It doesn't mean that you have to be, in any sort of ritual or tribe or with anyone. Is really a self-assessment, really assessing where you're at in life and what it is that you want to, what is your purpose and what it is that you want to get out of life. The first thing that you always want to take into consideration are any past traumas from your childhood or traumas that you have experienced as an adult, or any sort of trauma that you're experiencing in your life. And those type of traumas bring about a lot of different emotions, such as shame, guilt, worry, anger, depression, anxiety. So many different types of emotions come about as a result of a trauma we've experienced in our life. When we experience these type of traumas, we become vulnerable. We become more susceptible to people taking advantage of us, because our emotions we're so wounded and our emotions are so fragile that we don't have the capacity to see through the fog. Sometimes these type of traumas and situations that we go through, or unresolved emotions within ourselves, go untouched. They go really much into the abyss of the unknown, where we bury it into our subconscious mind, trying to avoid it. But the most important step is to identify those weaknesses within us. And just because they're weaknesses doesn't mean that they're bad or anything. Those are just things that we need to understand that is within us, is inherent within us as humans, experiencing things, experiencing different emotions, and how we can go about addressing those things, how we can go about healing those emotions. So again, we do not become victims to narcissists, that we do not become victims to charlatans and people who really don't have our best interests at hand. When you get to know yourself and you really come to a point that you understand where you're coming from and you fully understand and are clear what it is that you need to heal within yourself, then you empower yourself and you're able to attract those people who are out to help you, as opposed to people who can smell weakness from a mile away and use that against you for their advantage in personal and financial gain as well. So when you're going through the spiritual journey, knowing thyself is one of the most oldest sayings, if you will, in the occult circles and in the metaphysical circles. Know thyself, know yourself, understand yourself, and heal those things that are really hurting you, which really leads a lot of people to seek out people to help them. And that's great. That doesn't mean that you have to be isolated or be paranoid and feel like everyone is out to get you. But when you have a level of personal discernment within yourself, you're able to do that with others outside of you as well. There's nothing outside of you that will save you. There's nothing outside of you that is going to change your life. It's all within you. You have the power from within to be able to identify those empowerment tools, those empowerment gifts, self-empowerment gifts that you have within yourself. Spirituality definitely is not only an individual's work, but it's also a collective and community work. But before you are able to go into a coven, go into a group, a tribe, or be initiated into anything, you have to know what is your strength that you're bringing into the group. A lot of group leaders and a lot of people in groups tend to go by hierarchies. They tend to delve into egos, and there's sometimes tends to be a clash of personalities and misunderstandings. And that can muddle the connection within you and the elders or those in the higher ups if you don't identify within yourself what are your strengths. So before you embark in the spiritual journey with others, it's so important to build rapport with yourself and really understand where you're coming from. What is it about you that can make you susceptible to weaknesses? What is it about you that you can heal within yourself, so you're not left out into the wolves and people feeding off of your weakness, things that you still need to heal within yourself. So one of the first things that I always advise people is to find someone that they can confide in, whether it be a therapist, whether it be a counselor, whether it be a spiritual mentor, someone who is pretty much neutral in their stance as to what it is you're going through. And not that these people are going to heal you, not that these people are going to change your life and take away whatever it is that you're dealing with. More or less people that are going to give you coping mechanisms, that are going to help and guide you into healing and identifying those things that's hurting, that where you're hurting, why you're hurting, and giving you coping mechanisms to push through and get over these obstacles and barriers that you may be dealing with, especially from an emotional sense. So if you don't have someone that you can confide in, someone that you can trust in, you can journal your emotions and journal your feelings. Set up an altar. I know for a lot of people, setting up altars can be a little bit overcomplicated, or they overcomplicate it themselves, or they don't have the space, or they're not able to because of their living arrangements. But I always say having an altar is one of the best bets that you can do and set up for yourself, because that will give you a reference point. It'll open a portal of connection with your higher self, with your God, your creator, whatever source that you identify with, and help give you a sense of ritual or repetition or a discipline to be able to say, okay, if I'm feeling this type of way, I can go to my altar and speak these things out with myself. A lot of people tend to give it a negative association, or say that you're crazy, or whatever the case may be, because you're talking to yourself. But really, you're not talking to yourself per se. You're talking to your higher self. You are having a one-on-one dialogue with yourself, and you're doing self-evaluation. I've been talking to myself for years. I know it sounds crazy, but I've always had my altar since I was very, very young, 16, 17. Throughout high school, I had it. Throughout my college years, throughout my 20s, and now I'm in my early 30s. I still always go back to my altar to be able to discuss things with myself first before I go out into the world, or before I reach out to anyone else to help me. So there's many ways that you can tap into yourself and build that personal rapport, that one-on-one rapport with yourself. But a lot of people tend to have that difficulty with communicating with themselves, and that's okay. This is where a therapist or counselor can come in, where you can have that one-on-one dialogue with that person and help identify some of your strengths and also weaknesses that you may have or may be dealing with. And more especially healing trauma, healing that inner trauma within ourselves. Again, whether it be something in your childhood, something that you went through that you still haven't healed or confronted, or many things that we don't talk about with other people because of fear of being stigmatized, of being judged, or having people's opinions really get in the way of our situation. A lot of things that people suffer and go through is because they keep their emotions repressed, and they have difficulty expressing or trusting people to help them through things, especially very personal, traumatic things that people may deal with. It's very hard to find someone that they can connect with on a one-on-one to be able to get through those things and heal. But healing is one of the main things that you should want to consider before you go into any sort of tradition, any sort of spiritual practice, anything. Before you start that, it's important that you get to know yourself, so that way you can start finding out your purpose and where pretty much you fit in the grander scheme of things and the collective work that we see happening nowadays. So please make sure that you give yourself a chance. Know thyself, know yourself first. Once the student is ready, the teachers will appear. And I always tell people that the only way the teacher will appear is if you are ready at some point. Because again, a healer or a teacher is not there to necessarily heal you of anything. They're there to guide you, to be that spokesperson for you, that advocate for you, that support system for you, to show you your strengths and help you build on those strengths. And also they can balance out any weaknesses that you have by showing you, okay, you may have a weak point here, you may be struggling with something here. Here are some of the ways that you can strengthen it. And by you doing the work personally, one-on-one with yourself, you're able then to see how you have that firsthand experience. When you have someone else doing a ritual for you or doing any sort of other spiritual work for you, they're doing it on their end with their perspective. But you need to build that one-on-one first-hand experience for yourself so you can come to self-realizations of what you're dealing with and what it is that you want to feel and see of the world. And that's how also we create boundaries of respect, boundaries of things that you will not tolerate, boundaries with your personal convictions and moral understanding of yourself, and all those things that make us unique and individuals. Because what may work for me may not necessarily work for you. What works for you may not necessarily work for me. But it's important that you're able to identify that and see where is that fine line of boundaries and understanding my personal experience. Doing these type of things and these one-on-one self-assessments, evaluation, introspective work really leaves you to a much more better understanding of yourself, and also doesn't leave you susceptible to spiritual charlatans and scammers. There are a lot of people who feed off of people's suffering, pain, and ignorance of themselves. And then they come in with their egotistical aspects and say, well, I'm here to save the day, without really giving you any input. A lot of people who are charlatans, who are really fakers in this, and trust me, there's a lot of them in the spiritual realm and also in the physical realm, they feed off of your ignorance. So if you are not sure of who you are, where you stand, and what is your purpose, a lot of these people can come in and take advantage. Then they'll tell you about yourself, and then you're just like in awe. Oh my God, this, we see like this halo around this person, and we give them our powers. You never want to give away your powers. You always want to protect it. And again, not isolating yourself, because in this spiritual community, in terms of your individual development, there's also a collective and community development as well. And we need other people to help us grow and move forward. But at the same time, you don't want to be someone who is undermined or is second to anyone. We're all in this together. We're all equal. The only thing that sets us apart is our experience and the work that we put in. But the more you put in the work, the more you'll get out of what it is you're putting into. It's all about input, output. And so if you leave yourself in that fog of ignorance of yourself and you don't know who you truly are and what your purpose is, you are opening yourself, and your auric system is leaking out a lot of weaknesses. So these people can tell when you are in a desperate situation, and that's when they take advantage. You also need to identify that not everything is always going to be resolved immediately with one ritual. It takes also self-assessment of your character, of your way of being, understanding your personality, understanding the many things that makes you, and not only because it makes you, but understanding what are some of the things that society or my parents have programmed in me that I see myself who I am today. Is that really who you are? Is that really who you identify with? So there's a litany of things that you want to consider with yourself first before you embark on a spiritual journey with other people or someone else taking the lead in your spiritual development. You don't need to be initiated. Don't need to be this bookworm or anything. You just need to have that one-on-one with yourself. So how do you do that? Again, you sit and meditate at your altar, you journal, you may want to speak with someone, a therapist, a counselor, or even reach out to someone that you truly trust and really talk about these things to help you release them, as opposed to keep repressing them. A lot of our repressed emotions that we keep inside tends to just sit in our subconscious mind, and as a result develop into behaviors that we are not too aware of, whether it be codependency, whether it be victimization. There's a variety of different emotions and behaviors that we create of ourselves based off trauma that we haven't talked about or been able to release by repressing them consistently and continually. So believing in yourself and having confidence in yourself, and not questioning yourself out of things or comparing yourself, because I see a lot of people too that they compare themselves a lot. So for example, if I may share something on Instagram, on a story, people have 101 questions, which is great. Questioning is very, very important. You have to question everything and do the work and research. But at the same time, just because something worked for me in A, B, C, D doesn't mean that it'll work the same way for you. How you look at spiritualists or people who work in the spiritual aspect or spiritual wellness and development or intuitiveness is that you see them as a guide, as a portal of inspiration. Because yes, there are certain traditions and certain ways of doing things or should be done. You don't want to take that for law either, because not everyone's spiritual journey is the same. Everyone's spiritual journey, everyone's spiritual experience is very different, and everyone's purpose is different. So just because you may see me doing something some way doesn't mean that it's necessarily the same path for you either. I'm an initiated priestess of Orisha and of Shango and Oshun, also an espiritista, and I also do other spiritual work as well. I'm very much into mythology, into different methods of metaphysics, the occult, and so I have a very long and extensive background, most of it self-taught, where I was very curious about certain things and wanted to know about certain things. So I would do my own research, read books, look into different cultures and whatnot. But that was my way of doing it. Now, I'm not saying that it can't work for you. Most definitely it can. But when you're going through that process of research and rediscovering, you come to your own self-realizations. But the only way you can come to these realizations if you do some type of level of work. I always tell people as well, this is not a hobby. This is a lifestyle. This is something that you incorporate into your day-to-day life, into every aspect of your life, in search of your truth. Your truth is your initiation. That should be more than enough. You searching for your own truth is your initiation. So you don't necessarily have to be part of a group. You don't necessarily have to go through an extensive ritual. You don't necessarily have to be part of something, of everything all the time. There has to be a point where you have your own core self as a point of reference to what it is you were meant to be here. And not all of us are readers, not all of us are healers. There's so many different paths. There's billions of people on the planet. And not everyone can read everyone or cleanse or heal everyone. In the spiritual work, we all have a different purpose. It's important for us to not look at what this next person is doing or compare what the other person is doing, but really looking at what is our strengths and how we can do it. Now, if you are a reader, most definitely, then tap into that, develop that. But I have faith and self-confidence and that self-esteem that you're part of doing this. A lot of us deal with a lot of imposter syndrome, self-doubt, negative and pessimistic self-thoughts, and so all of these things. So before you embark on that, those are the type of things that you want to address and heal first before you go into this journey and start, claiming yourself as a title or anything of that nature. Because again, you can become victim to things that you may not be too aware of. Like, for example, healing someone of something, of a spiritual ailment, whether trauma, where do you think that energy goes? Energy never dies. It needs to be transmuted and dissipated some way, somehow. So if you're healing someone, you're literally actually taking something off of someone. You're helping them come to a realization where they no longer are feeding into that thought or idea. So what do you think that energy does? It either goes back to the same source source or it sticks to you. So you as a healer or someone as a reader need to know how to dispossess yourself of that, to release yourself from those attachments, those spiritual attachments. And with time and experience, you'll start realizing that. But a lot of emotions and things that we deal with has a lot to do with spiritual attachments. And if we're not too aware of that, that can lead to illness, that can lead to confusion, and so many other things and misunderstandings as well, that it really isn't conducive to personal and spiritual self. So the important thing is to yes, see these people as people that you can confide in, people that you can emulate, people that can inspire you. But remember that your path is very different. It may be in the same realm of things, but it's not necessarily always the same. Just like no altar are the same, no two paths are the same, no two mindsets are the same. Everyone has their unique input and ability. You just have to identify it, believe in it, and act on it. So you can have all this knowledge of books, of gurus online, of people that you admire and inspire you, but until you don't apply it into your life and for yourself, you're never going to know. So having that self-confidence and building that self-confidence will give you more self-empowerment and help you feel more comfortable in what you're doing. You don't want to embark into any spiritual journey or spiritual ritual or anything of that nature with doubt or fear, because that opens you up even to more energy vampires and people who can see that you're not too in tune with yourself and take advantage of you and charge you hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. And not only that, not even the money aspect or the financial aspect, but more about taking your power. When people disempower you, you feel like you're codependent on them, that you can only depend on them, that you can't think or do anything for yourself. And that is how your powers are taken away from you when you are disempowered. But when you self-empower yourself by trusting in yourself, by healing, by doing the work of identifying your shadows and those things that can leave you vulnerable to these people, then you're able to really step into your role a little bit more confidently. And not everyone is to be, you know, a spiritual worker or anything. This is stuff that's done for your own personal growth and personal development. It's not that you want to go out here and open a wellness center or start reading people. Some people really just want it to self-heal, to have this connection with love and understanding, and to further build their faith. So whether you have vivid dreams or whether you have synchronicities, those are also the cues that you want to pay attention to. But if you're distracted with other things and you're not fully in tune with yourself, you're going to miss the opportunity. You're going to miss the subtle cues. A lot of people tend to think that spiritual communication are angels coming from the sky and all this hoopla, and it really isn't. They're very subtle cues, whether it be dreams that you have, little symbols throughout the day. Like a lot of people now are seeing these angel numbers. That's one way, but there's so many other different ways, which is unique to you, but you have to open your mind to identifying that to your own self and how it is. And I share this because me, myself, was a victim of many spiritual charlatans myself. And it wasn't until I empowered myself and say, hey, I can do this. I have the power. I have the ability to really tap into those things that I need to heal for myself and not continuously become a victim. Because I used to have people charge me $500, $1,000 for rituals. Oh, I can take this off of you. Or, you know, there's a dark spirit around you. There's, you know, this negative thing following you. And this is why things are going so wrong in your life. And I would just pay out thinking that that would solve the problem. But I realized that those dark shadows and those dark energies and spirits that were around me were by my own doing. No one has the power to ruin your life. No one has the power, evil power, to do anything to you unless you allow them to. And so that's what I dealt with. I dealt with that for a very long time until I realized that I have to do my own work. I have to sit at my altar and identify, one, what is it that I want for myself? What is my greatest dream or desire for myself? And two, how can I go about doing that? So understanding my character and building my own personal character and really building boundaries as well, because I would really just allow people to do what they want, because I would say, well, they're elders, they must know more than me, they're more spiritual than me, they have more experience than me. Yeah, that may be the case, but I too have that ability. I realize that I too have the power to be able to self-empower myself and be able to be in that position eventually myself. So when I took my own powers into my own hands and really released myself from the confines of there's always something outside of me that will save me, I was able to really find the greater God within myself and really have that self-confidence to be able to heal those things that I was trying to heal myself from. But until I didn't realize that, I wasn't able to come to that solidified self-esteem, that solidified self-empowerment, and realize that I had the answers all along, and realize that I too can be able to heal myself and in turn help others to heal themselves as well. Once that happened, I was able to find the people who empowered me, who were able to teach me more things and were able to bring me into their circle of understanding and be able to learn from them. But just because I found these people or I was part of this group didn't mean that the work was done. If anything, more work came about. So I say all that to say is to have some trust in yourself, to give yourself a chance to get to know yourself. Who are you? Who are you really? Especially when we come as adults, we have the ability to become more independent. And then we start looking at the relationships that we have with others, whether it be in our family, whether it be romantic relationships, at work, friendships, any sort of union or connection with other people helps us really see that they are a projection of us. A lot of people forget that we are all one and the same, but with different aspects and perspectives of ourselves. And so a lot of the people that come into our lives, whether it be romantic, friendship, or even family, they're truly projections of us. They project not only their weaknesses and what they're doing and what they're feeling or going through in their lives, but also projections of things that we need to heal and fix within ourselves as well. So that's why it's so important to identify who you are and really find that connection with your higher self, so that way you're not left out into the wolves. When you come into a group, when you come into any sort of coven, whatever tribe, whatever it is that you want to call it, you want to come in with your strength. You want to come in with your strength already identified, so that way you can say, this is what I'm bringing to the table. This is what I'm bringing to the group, as opposed to having that victim mentality, well, oh, come save me, come and do the work for me. So it takes a lot of self-empowerment, self-assessment, introspective work to really come in tune with that type of perspective. It's so important that you have a point of reference. Again, whether it be an altar, whether it be journaling, whether it be meditation, whatever method or modality of self-healing and wellness or spiritual work that you identify with is neither right or wrong. You may like music, you may like dancing. At some point, there has to be something that you identify with for yourself, by yourself, and that no one, had any sort of input or outside input. So self-realizations are very important, especially when developing your spiritual work, because that gives you the groundwork, that gives you the foundation of what you'll be building up from there on. So when you come into a tribe or you start working with someone from a spiritual perspective, you have to have some sort of foundation. You can't be working off a shoddy foundation, which is filled with fear, self-doubt, misunderstandings, ignorance, or victimization. You never want to come in feeling like you're a victim of circumstances. Always be victorious of those circumstances. Because at times we always have that victim mentality where we're expecting or waiting for someone to save us, but that is not the case. Only you're able to save yourself and really find the truth of what it is you're seeking and what is the truth of your life. And eventually it's really about paying attention to the subtle cues, those coincidences. I always tell people, yes, you may have a dream and you're trying to figure out the symbols, but a lot of those symbols are subjective. So I can have a symbol of a butterfly and it can mean 100 different things to me, and for you it can only mean 5 different things. So when it comes to those type of subconscious symbols, because that's what dreams are, they're bringing to the forefront those things that's sitting in our subconscious mind. You want to understand, how is it that I identify with this? Why is it, or what is it trying to tell me? What is it that is trying to speak to me through? So symbols are really much a great way for you to look at the subtle cues of every day. You may see a sign on a bus, you may see a quote, you may come into a conversation, or you may overhear a conversation. There's so many different subtle cues that the universe has to show us that we're in the right path. But if you're not in tune with that, if you're not in tune with yourself and listening to the language of your own soul, of your subconscious mind, you can miss the opportunity. You can miss a lot of opportunities because you're waiting for someone else to identify it or define it for you, or whatever the case may be. So it's very important that you connect with yourself first, that you find a middle ground with yourself, so that way you can work with other people and you can bring other people into your spiritual framework to help develop you. So again, no one has the key or the answers to what it is you need to further develop. Only you have that within yourself. And with due diligence, with patience, with forgiveness, with love and understanding, you'll be able to get to that at some point. But until you don't give yourself the chance, you'll never be able to really experience that for yourself, because you haven't allowed yourself to develop first within yourself, and then come empowered to the group, to the collective with your strengths. And I'm not talking about ego. I'm not talking about, oh, I'm better than you, or I do this better than you. Is that you know something about yourself that no one can argue for you, that you have your own personal convictions, that you have had your own one-on-one experience that no one else had, that you can't fully, completely, have anyone else understand. It's for you to understand, and by living your life's purpose, you'll be able to provide that as an example to the collective, as opposed to saying it. You live it, you embody it, you become it, and people see that in your life. They'll say, oh, well, Jessica, you're glowing today, or what is it that you're doing that, you're so different? People will start noticing that. They'll start noticing how things around you and within you changes. And so that is how you create inspiration for others to want to then seek that higher self within themselves, to be a better person, to be a better human, if you will, for humanity. So I hope that was informative enough, and that question really encompassed how to truly protect yourself and progress from spiritual charlatans who are just out there to feed off of your energy, to feed off your weakness. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and make sure to stay tuned. I hope that this video was able to give you some sort of insight, and that you got something out of it, and that it can help you. So make sure to share, like, and subscribe, and thank you so much for your support.